Now, I'm not going to take credit for this, but I'm going to Christopher Columbus this, right? I didn't discover America, but I don't want the credit for it. I discovered
very timely
the discovery.
reference.
In my opinion, I discovered it. You know what I mean? Like I discovered the meme, so it's like I'm the discoverer, right? This was going around. You know, the NFL, the London games, another one this weekend, and we'll talk about it here coming on up. But I just love this. This is America in a nutshell. Someone tweeted that you got to love the audacity of America. We have to go to London, sing our national anthem that's literally about beating the English in a war before a game that we bring back to this country in which we take the name and stole it from a different sport that they invented. The audacity of Americans. And
that's
we're
right.
just like, accept it, deal with it, and America's on your bringing
on your soil
football on your soil to sing the national anthem with the American flag about kicking your ass in 1776 to play our game on your soil, bring it to your people,
and take your money.
I just love that. You got to love the audacity. So it's like America, baby. That is exactly what the London games are all about. All the NFL is just an extension of the Revolutionary War. You know, what is it like you see that meme where it's the dominoes where it's like throws tea in the Boston Harbor and then it's like bigger domino, bigger. And then like the biggest one is like people in London rooting for American football. You know what I mean? And football is now football.
We've ended up here.
Yeah, that's where we ended up.
Well, you know, in very distinct uniforms on both sides of the Revolutionary War. We had marching bands before marching bands were even a thing.
It's basically just we're just replaying the Revolutionary War. And we're gonna give we're gonna give London a couple bad teams just beat up on them every week.
We should probably just make them play The Patriot with Mel Gibson in the stadium. Have a 2.5 hour showing before each game.
Such a good film. Such a great movie.
That's fantastic. Good stuff. And what a way to launch ourselves into a great London game that was this past weekend between the Jaguars and Bills. But a lot to get to here. Obviously, on a Wednesday, we've got a little bit of an abbreviated episode for you here. Not going to go game by game and give you the deep breakdown of each contest, but really touch on the overall themes of this past week as trends are forming and trajectories are beginning to show here, whether or not some teams are on the up, some teams on the down. But let's get to it. Here we are in week 5 of our recap.
Serving the Quad Cities area since 1973. And with over 50 years of excellence on their track record, you'll see why it's so easy to trust their experts when it comes to all of your home improvement projects. This family-owned business has you covered on all your needs. Protect your home or building from the elements today and get great roof repair services. Need new windows? No problem. Durham Remodeling can upgrade your windows and doors. Whether you want to upgrade the little details in your home or office, or want to tear a room down and start fresh, the expert contractors at Durham Remodeling have your back. Even the smallest changes can completely transform your space. Ready to start entertaining your friends for backyard barbecues? Durham Remodeling will help you plan, design, and build your deck and patio for the perfect outdoor space. Durham Remodeling's work is 100% guaranteed, so you can rest assured that you're getting the best service around. Call 309-786-6715 today for your free estimate for all your roofing, siding, flooring, windows, and painting needs. That's Durham Remodeling, 309-786-6715.
All right. Well, we did mention that we're going to touch on a lot of topics from this week, which also includes insane injuries to key players all throughout the league. We'll get to that, obviously, big time in this episode here. But we will discuss the first 2 games of the week because while the London game was absolutely fantastic and very interesting, the Bears played on Thursday night. And so, of course, we got to talk about that, Mark. Your Bears putting up a 40-burger on the Washington Commanders in a 40-20 victory. And Justin Fields, at the time, league leader in touchdown passes. He's now tied for second. That is quite a surprise. But how are you feeling? They get their first win of the season. Justin's looked good the last 2 weeks, albeit against some bad defenses. What's the overall, takeaway on your end?
The vibes are turning around in Chicago, and I will say, I said this on my show on Saturday, and I think it stands to reason. I still feel this way here now, almost a week after that win. There are three pillars to your franchise, right? You have your general manager, you have your head coach, you have your quarterback. And if all three of those are in working order, obviously owners are big, but if you trust your management, general manager to like run the ship, right? If all three of those are in working order, you're in a really great spot. And right now with the Chicago Bears, like Ryan Poles, the general manager, had a really great week with his rookie players really starting to show up and make plays. Getting Chase Claypool out of the locker room was a huge. That's subtraction, addition by subtraction. And I love that he didn't double down on the mistake. You gave up a lot to get him. Yes, a high second round pick. But at the time, it seemed like a worthwhile investment to try to give your young quarterback a weapon. And we've now learned that Chase Claypool is just one of those guys that probably is just going to have this type of career where he's done within the next 2 years. We won't be really talking about Chase Claypool. He seems to be a distraction. He seems to just be full of himself and not really an all-out team player. And you can just see how much freer Justin Fields has played the last 2 weeks, losing a 6'4" big target red zone weapon like Chase Claypool. So clearly that was addition by subtraction. That's a win, in my opinion, for Ryan Poles. You were aggressive.
More into DJ Moore now, too, obviously, with his huge day.
Exactly. You were aggressive, and then you didn't double down on the aggression. So I'm thinking positive vibes for Ryan Poles right now. Your quarterback, obviously, you just mentioned it. 8 touchdowns, 1 interception in the last 2 weeks. I mean, he has exploded. And Justin Fields, if he keeps this type of consistency, there's no reason why he's not the starting quarterback of the Chicago Bears next year. Absolutely no reason. So this is the positive vibes for him, arrow in the right direction. Matt Eberflus is the only one where it's like, okay, the arrow is still flat or pointed down. He's got a lot more to do to right that ship for himself to get him to the level of being safe, as I feel like that Fields and Poles are. Fields has to keep just playing well and putting up numbers like this at a consistent pace. He'll be fine. Poles, keep being aggressive and not doubling down on your mistakes and showing and having, 75% of your rookie of each draft class hitting like it's been working for him. He's doing fine. He didn't hire Matt Eberflus either. So he's got that going for him as well. And so Matt Eberflus, the next 2 weeks for the Chicago Bears are gigantic. You have extra rest at home against the Vikings, who now are without Justin Jefferson, and then the Raiders. So Matt Eberflus it's in front of him to turn it around too. So overall, that's how I feel it. It also frustrates me more because now we're seeing this offense clicking. Just goes to show you the capability and the talent was there from week 1. Why did it take till week 4.5 for it to really pop? And then defensively, there's still a lot of fundamentals that I'm struggling with. They just can't consistently rush the passer. The back end of the defense is so beat up. They're getting some guys back. Brisker, Gordon, Eddie Jackson should all be back for the game against the Vikings. So again, no excuses. You can't give up 25 points to a Vikings team without Justin Jefferson. So that's something to really look for Bears fans. And then overall, I will say, that game, looking back on it, it was just really nice to see them close it out. It started to have the vibes of the Broncos game where it was falling apart, but they shut down on the road, clamped up against a Washington team, and found a way to get out of there with a victory. And for Washington, they're starting to look a little bit more like how I predict them beginning of the year. A little disjointed at times, not really confident in themselves, quarterback making mistakes. They got to find their rhythm. They're still, I think, if you're Washington, you're still pleasantly surprised by the start. You just can't let it completely unravel now. You got to find a way to reel it all back in and string some wins together in a very winnable division. Not winnable like you can win the division, but you can get wins in your division against a Dallas and against a Giants team.
Yeah, for sure. And their defense has been underperforming yet again this season. So that's about 3 straight years of
Ron Rivera
not living up to the talent that they have on there. So Ron Rivera's got to absolutely be one of those on the hot seat this year, even if they get to 7 wins, which is what I predicted. But That's just not good enough for this
I had
team.
a final point on the Bears, and I wanted your thought on this too. For me, I said this as well, and I stand by this. I'm done talking about the Bears' next quarterback. Like right now, we're at a point in time where, especially with these 2 games in a row from Justin Fields, there's no reason why you don't support Justin Fields and see everything this kid has for the rest of the season. Because even if he doesn't ball out, well, then you have the high picks. If he does ball out, you're still going to have 2 probably high picks. One really high, one maybe still within the top 10 or top 15, depending on where the Bears can go from here. So, like, that will sort itself out when it gets there. And there's no point in talking about the next quarterback for the Bears unless we're also talking about the next coach for the Bears. Like, there's just no point in talking about a new quarterback. I get Justin Fields and a new head coach. I don't get Matt Eberflus and a new quarterback. That makes no sense at all. So I just want all of our fans and listeners to know I'm done talking about the Caleb Williams, the Drake Mays, the Shedeur Sanders, all the Bo Nixes, all of the quarterbacks that are coming out in this draft. I'm all in on Justin Fields like I was, and we'll sort out the quarterback position after I have answers on the head coaching position once the season finally comes to a conclusion.
Absolutely. No, I think that's the right mentality to take into this. We got to see more consistency from Fields, but you've seen enough games of his, spectacular talent to know that he obviously can do it. It's just about putting those pieces together, and you got to give him the runway to be able to do that and show it this year. We'll go to the, next game in week 5, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time over in London. The Jaguars, for the second straight week over there, getting a second straight win as well. And absolutely, I thought that was a huge advantage for them going into this to get the Bills in the second game in London instead of the first. They're able to post up, relax, be there, maybe do some sightseeing, and just kind of have that comfort, whereas the Bills had to do this big travel week and get out there and get settled. The Jags were already settled, and this was as impressive of a defensive performance from Jacksonville as it was offensively, I thought. Limiting the Bills to just 20 points in this game. And yes, they had their moments. Of course, Stephon Diggs got his in this game. Gabe Davis came up big in moments as well. But overall, the Jaguars were really able to do the bend, don't break type of defensive mentality that is great in thought, but not always as easy in practice. But they were able to do that and give their offense an opportunity. And really, I thought offensively, they looked about as good as they have these last 2 weeks, really kind of starting to turn the page there. Still not, spectacular performances. We're not getting the 3 touchdown games from Trevor Lawrence that, we saw at the end of last season. 300 yards, though, in this game. And overall, they were able to control the, line of scrimmage and control the time of possession for much of this game. And that's what I thought was really, a telling thing. The only troubling trend that we're continuing to see with the Jaguars is their inability to finish and drives. Like, they keep getting near the red zone and not converting those into touchdowns, which is bizarre given how many, big weapons they have in Ingram and Calvin Ridley on the outside, and just the different weapons inside as well with ETN and Christian Kirk and all those guys. So they're going to have to figure that out, because that's something that's, not sustainable season long. But overall, I was encouraged by just their ability to take a phenomenal opponent in Buffalo that was on the rise and really take care of business, and now find themselves in a, more comfortable position in their own division and in the conference.
Yeah, I would have been really concerned if Jacksonville lost this game. Buffalo, and I'm not the first one to say it, I'm sure you've heard it before, terrible idea not to leave until Thursday. Here's a word of advice. If you are taking your team to London, you get on you pack for London before you leave for the game you're playing. The Bills should have immediately got on a plane and gone straight to London as soon as they had finished their last game. It makes no sense. It doesn't matter if the front half of your week is screwed up. Then you get that out of the way so that by the time you're asleep on Saturday night, you're in a normal, acclimated sleep schedule, ready to go to wake up to play a game on Sunday. It was a terrible decision. When the Bills finally woke up and played late in the third and fourth quarter, the Bills were the better team, but it was a little too late, and they were still making sloppy mistakes. Overall, I thought Jacksonville did exactly what they needed to do. They went to London. They took advantage of a worse opponent in Atlanta, and then they were the more well-rested, more acclimated team, and they beat a better team than them at home on the road because they were more prepared for it. And so kudos to them for as an organization figuring that out. They come back to the States with some momentum. Hopefully they can keep that going. They have got to find a way to also, in my opinion, just keep letting Trevor Lawrence be an athlete. Like when he's been moving recently, it really creates problems for the defense. And so become a little bit more of a Josh Allen at times, Trevor. I think it's okay. It'll serve you well while you're trying to figure some stuff out, chemistry-wise with your weapons, especially in the red zone. For the Bills, not worried at all. That was a tough spot for them to be in against a very decent and high-end opponent. And their coach put them in a bad spot by not leaving until when they left. And so if they would have won that game, it would have said more about Jacksonville being a disaster and not as good as we thought, as opposed to the Bills being really, really good. The Bills are really, really good. Jacksonville's good. And I think that both teams on American soil playing again, I'd have no issues taking the Bills to win that game. Now, Matt Milano injury, that's really, really concerning.
Brutal. Yeah, that's huge, man. I mean, they lost their two best defensive players in back-to-back weeks in Tre'Davious White and now Matt Milano, and not just two of the best players. Like if your two of your best players are defensive tackles, yeah, your interior is going to suck, but at least you have an entire back seven to help alleviate that. But you're losing your number one corner and your number one linebacker. Those are extremely crucial positions. The green dot, the guy calling the defense. That really is a tough one. And now obviously our predictions preseason didn't factor in injuries and such like that, but I'm still feeling more confident now that the Bills aren't going to be the team that many thought they would be coming into the season. That being said, this is one game. It's a standalone situation. They're going to win a lot of games this year. It's just whether or not they're going to be in shootouts.
They're going to have to win shootouts. Division.
Yeah.
And they get to win shootouts, and hopefully Von Miller stays healthy, gets right, and they can, because the Bills can still rush the passer. So if they can do that and be in shootouts, that's how they're going to have to play right now without White and Milano, because those are huge losses.
Massive injuries on these teams. Let's talk about Justin Jefferson and the Vikings. They go on the road or at home, against the Kansas City Chiefs and really play a close game. I mean, neither team looked particularly dominant, obviously, on offense in this one, but the Chiefs really did enough. And maybe towards the end of this game, it felt like it was, closer than it should have been. But the Chiefs win 27-20. Obviously, the headline coming out of this, Justin Jefferson going to miss several weeks on IR. What's the thought here? Because my initial thinking is this is the perfect opportunity for Minnesota to just mail it in, and we're done. We're gonna go get a quarterback next season. But obviously, it's a tough position with a young coach who wants to win and establish that, and a team that has been so close to winning a lot of these games. They've just been on the losing end of one-score games yet again.
It's tough.
But yeah, I mean, you lose your best guy, one of the best players in the league now for quite some time. I'd be shocked if they have him return after 4 weeks. I would imagine that he's going to sit out much of the rest of the season, if not all of it, to be honest.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. Justin Jefferson's he's a football player, and I think it's the right move to, if a hamstring injury with a guy like Jefferson, shut it down IR. That gives you 4 weeks. That, at least mentally for him, you say to himself, let's not even worry about it. We need you healthy. You're our franchise right now. The key will be, can they find a trade partner for Kirk Cousins? Because if you get Kirk out of the building, you can sell the tank easier and quicker. If they can't get Kirk out of the building, this is very much has the writings on the wall that they're going to go into Chicago and beat the Bears. And Kirk's going to have a rally win, and then it's going to be season back on, Vikings hanging around. So it's just you got to see the messaging from the front office and the ownership group, and whether Kirk's there or not, that's going to lead towards it. I think they're going to give Kirk this couple games and say, hey, can you right the ship without Justin Jefferson? And can you claw us back in? Their schedule is really workable, like the Bears is really workable. This game is for 2 1-4 teams. It's a crucial game for both of their seasons and where they're headed. So I think it's the right move to put Justin Jefferson on IR. Even if they were 4-1, I'd put him on IR because you cannot risk this becoming a nagging thing for this dude. You also need to make sure he is happy in the organization. You do not want him demanding a trade or wanting out. And maybe you can sell him on, listen, Justin, we're going to make sure you're healthy. We're going to make sure you're happy. We're going to make sure you're paid, and we're going to get you whatever quarterback you want. You tell us. Jordan Addison, the other wide receiver, he played with a guy who won the Heisman Trophy last year, who's projected to be the number 1 pick. So, yeah, it's an easy thing to think about. So much of it is going to happen, though, and I think depend. If the Bears can come out and beat down the Vikings, which they should, that with no Justin Jefferson at home, more time to prepare, getting healthier, their defense is healthier than the Vikings right now. Fields is playing out of his mind. If the Bears can put a beat down on the Vikings and say they win 30-13, something like that, and it's a bad day for Kirk, then you absolutely could see this being like, all right, make the phone calls. Who wants Kirk Cousins? Does Atlanta want him? Do the Jets actually want him? Like, who wants him? What can you get? Can you get a 5th rounder for him and eventually use that also as ammunition to trade up higher in the 1st round if you're going to end up needing to? It'll be really fascinating to see. And for the Chiefs overall, listen, ho-hum win. It says a lot. The Chiefs are a lot like the Patriots we thought about the last 20 years. If you win, you win. Like that, you're supposed to win that game. If it's not as pretty as you want it to be, who cares? Everyone leaves the game healthy. You get a W. Pacheco looked really good. In and out. Kelsey's okay. I would sit Kelsey Thursday night. You can probably beat the Broncos without him anyways. And it's a ho-hum, keep moving on type of victory. Don't overthink, was it a pass interference late? Who cares? You're the better team. You have Super Bowl aspirations. Stack a W, move on.
Yeah, I mean, I think we think back to the start of the season for the Chiefs and how everyone's like, is this going to be a problem? No weapons, everything. They've rattled off several in a row. Like they're back to being the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
Start 0-1, now 4-1. You're looking good. Their division's looking really rough right now. So from the Chiefs' perspective, they're in a great spot and they're going to be perfectly fine moving forward. I do think they're still going to have to identify that top target among their receiving core, but the fact that they're winning while they're trying to figure that out says everything that they need to. I just want to see more of Justin Ross, the Clemson product, who obviously has flashed so much talent, but we just haven't seen it at the NFL level just quite yet.
And he had a nice game.
Yeah. They need to, maybe they're just slowly bringing him along. But as for the Vikings, I think it's something fun to think about, something very interesting to ponder with Kirk Cousins being traded. But I just keep going back to the thought that when was the last time I can't think of the last time that a prominent player was traded mid-season, let alone a prominent quarterback traded mid-season.
Jimmy G, but he wasn't prominent yet. He was just potential.
Okay, yeah.
He was just the potential. Yeah. But that's,
right.
That's
really it. I mean, it just doesn't happen very often. And I'm not sure if it's teams not willing to trade these marquee players or if it's teams not trying to get players in a mid-season that are, that new to the team. Obviously, someone would want an addition of, a Justin Jefferson to their team at any point, but it's, it takes 2 to tango. And so, it's just interesting. I feel like almost more times than not, when it comes to these big types of moves that are put out there, they just don't end up happening. And we go back to
who are the destinations even for Kirk Cousins?
Everyone's talking about the Jets. Everyone's saying, that's the one I'm seeing the most of is, get Kirk Cousins on the Jets and this team can salvage their playoff hopes. But I mean, Kirk's not going to take a pay cut. You're going to have to pay him some money, and they're already paying Aaron Rodgers a decent amount, and Zach Wilson's making more than a backup quarterback. So, I mean, there's Yeah, there's not much wiggle room, I don't think, for New York to be able to pull that off. Plus, their O-line is terrible, and Kirk's not a guy that can navigate that. I just don't think it's a good fit.
Yeah, the Jets, the Falcons, to me, would be interesting because I think that they're in this mode where they are trying to build just a really solid team, and they're not necessarily panicking about the quarterback position. And so I think that the Falcons adding a Kirk Cousins could look at this and be like, hey, he's someone we might kick the tires on in the offseason anyways. So why not just try to bring him in and see what he's like? Because Atlanta's got a ton of weapons, and part of the problem is Ritter had a nice game, 300 plus yards, but they're a team that makes some sense. I no longer think it makes sense with Tampa, because Tampa could just say to itself, we can wait and get him in the offseason, kind of see how the rest of the season plays out. With Baker and everything. Speaking of guy got traded midseason last year, Baker, but again, not prominent. I don't know. It's a really fascinating discussion, and there's a lot of teams that just don't feel like they need him right now. Kirk will be a starter somewhere next year, absolutely. Sure. But a lot of it will be.
I think there's pressure from the league though too. Like, you cannot signal tanking. And they don't want it.
And that would be a huge signal of tanking. You lose to the Bears, you trade Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson's on IR. That's a huge signal of tanking.
Yeah, for sure. So hopefully Justin Jefferson's able to rebound perfectly fine from this, and we're seeing a lot more of him. But yeah, the Vikings are going to struggle because of this, and we'll see where this team goes. But yeah,
it drives home. If the Bears give up 25 plus points again for the 16th straight week in a row to a Justin Jefferson-less Vikings team while being at home, you fire Matt Eberflus straight into Lake Michigan.
Well, they didn't give up 25 plus last week. They gave up 20.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Finally, that ended
but
the
that
streak.
Was probably the
True,
end.
That ended the streak. But like in the losses, so there you go. Don't restart the streak. You can't. You can't restart the streak. You fire Matt Eberflus straight into Lake Michigan.
One of the highest of highs and lowest of lows stories so far this year is the Colts' Anthony Richardson, and unfortunately, he looks like he's going to be out for an extended period of time.
Maybe surgery. They're talking now.
We're seeing best case scenario. He misses 3 to 5 weeks, and that even seems a little bit optimistic. Leaves with some sort of shoulder injury.
Yeah.
And, it's tough, man. And this one was sustained on a running play yet again. And these have been the concerns, obviously, when we're talking about, quarterbacks that are running the football a lot. Those concerns have come up with Josh Allen in the past, Cam Newton, obviously, and how his career started to fall apart towards the end because of just the hits on the body.
Yeah.
The bigger they are, the harder they fall. And Anthony Richardson already as a rookie showed flashes of awesome play early this year. And now it's going to be the Gardner Minshew show for at least the next month plus, but very likely even further down the road than that.
Yeah, with Shane Steichen. It's a reason why he brought Minshew over. And, I hate to say it, but if you go back a month and a half ago when we were talking about beginning of the season and everything, I had said part of my prediction of having the Colts losing as many games as they did is I said Richardson's going to miss 2 or 3 games. Like, it's just going to happen. I've seen it with Justin Fields. You're seeing it now at an alarming rate with Anthony Richardson. I mean, alarming. And the concern is it's not just a shoulder, it's his throwing shoulder. He's a rookie, and he might need surgery on his throwing shoulder. Yikes. Like, that is the last thing you want to hear if you're a Colts fan.
I must have missed this. They actually did place him on IR today, so he is out at least 4 games. Yeah.
And so it is, listen, it's a blessing to have Gardner Minshew. They probably will end up winning more games because they have Gardner Minshew now. This season was never about winning games. It was always about getting Anthony Richardson in and starting the Anthony Richardson saga. And as soon as he's healthy, you put him back in. Like, it's back in, because he's not – this is different from Andrew Luck. He's not being beat up because he's behind a bad offensive line. He's getting shot after shot. He is taking these hits because he is an aggressive, gigantic player. And unlike Josh Allen, some of it's luck, some of it's just maybe the style. Josh Allen hasn't sustained the giant injury yet.
He hasn't. Yep.
Cam Newton was never injured. It just at the end of his career, he completely lost his fastball and he broke down. Cam Newton was even still running in those years with the Patriots, but remember Cam's problem was he couldn't throw the deep ball anymore. And that's what he was known for.
When he lost his speed too and everything.
His shoulder was dead. It was destroyed. So massive concerns for Richardson. I mean, massive. But as far as the Colts go, they're gonna be actually probably a better team overall now as far as winning games, because Minshew will run the offense and with a coach he knows really well, and they have Jonathan Taylor. They're gonna lean on Jonathan Taylor, and they're gonna be a competitive, scrappy team.
Yeah, speaking of which, Jonathan Taylor getting that massive deal.
Yeah.
I believe it was $23 million guaranteed, a $42 million 3-year
he's getting like
extension.
$14 a year.
Yeah. So, I mean, kudos to him because of all of what we saw throughout the entire offseason process, training camp.
Yeah.
The kind of playing games on both sides and unsure of whether or not when he even was able to come off the PUP list, if he was going to be suiting up and playing games for this team. They get the deal done, so they have their guy now moving forward, and so they're and it's perfect timing because now they're absolutely going to have to lean on him even more so. On the flip side, the Dolphins kind of struck gold with several running backs in their deploy. Raheem Mostert having a career year, but then obviously Devon Achane, the rookie, was exploding the last 2 weeks with just some massive games, the team setting records in the process. And then he goes down with a knee injury. He has been placed on IR today as well. They're going to get Jeff Wilson back, so probably won't miss too much of a step, but still for the Dolphins, a tough blow for them. The good news is that their scheme is set and made to work with several different people in the backfield. And so Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson Jr. should be taking the rock for the time being. And they seem to also be still firing on all cylinders, relatively speaking. So the Dolphins are one of those teams that are continuing on that trend, despite the injury luck or unlucky injury status that they've had over this last week.
Yeah, to me, the interesting thing is going to be how do they integrate Claypool once he finally gets going? It should be this upcoming week. I've heard rumors they're going to try to play him at tight end because they're going to play like this kind of fast, which again the dude can't block. So good luck, Miami. I don't know what they do with that. Through 5 games, this is from Adam Schefter. I don't know if you saw this. Through 5 games, the Miami Dolphins have now had 2,568 total yards of offense. They have now had the most yards of total offense by any team in the first 5 games of NFL history, passing
second only to the greatest show on turf, right?
No, they passed the greatest show on turf.
Right. That's what I'm saying. They passed the greatest show on turf. Yeah.
So they passed the Rams as now they're in second. So what we are seeing from the Dolphins is historic, and so I wouldn't say you don't want to overreact, but you also want to make sure this isn't a fluke. Like, they are really, really offensively skilled and gifted. Remember, it's September, October football. It's not November, December football, January football, which is why I think we all still have this little tiny pause on Miami, but they're historic right now. Achane, it's a bummer, but they have guys coming back. I don't worry about this offense skipping a beat. Achane was their backup running back anyway. So we're talking about like, oh no, woe is me. They lost a backup running back. Well, they're getting their other backup back that Mostert, is the starter. Like they're going to be fine. And I trust Mike McDaniels with anything right now. The dude is just terrific. And you can just tell how well of a coach football team they are. And I give them a lot of credit, for their win against New York this weekend, because that was one of those games where it's like, if they would have lost that game, it is full on push the panic button in Miami. Like, Miami's a fraud. And you could see them maybe, losing that game. Like, everyone's building up to the Bills game. You lose that one.
Trap game. Yeah.
Trap game. But no, they came out and they got the job done and they beat up on a bad opponent. It's very similar to like the Lions won this weekend. People are saying, well, you're making too big of a deal of the Lions win against the Panthers. No, I'm not. at home, a team they're supposed to win, and they go out and they pound the crap out of them. Like, they just demolish them. And that's what Miami did too. Like, those are like, the team is showing you who they are. Like, that's mental preparedness and coaching for football games. That's just like, we're going to learn a lot about the Bears and the Vikings this weekend. I hate to go back to it, but it's a great example. Like, the Bears need to win this game, should win this game. The Vikings are almost waving the white flag. So if they come out and beat the Bears, it again is going to talk about the coaching, mental preparedness, and all those intangible things beyond just the talent and the names on the roster. Miami and Detroit, impressive wins this weekend, even though they were against lesser opponents.
All right. Well, we'll get to some more injury news and some more games right after this.
Transform your body into a canvas of exquisite storytelling and profound self-expression with the skilled hands of Ryan Allison. Craft custom masterpieces that tell your unique story together. Ryan specializes in color tattoos as well as black and gray. He also practices a diverse range of styles, whether you're passionate about anime, fantasy, mythology, pop culture, video games, movies, the esoteric, nature, creatures, dot work, black work, or you have your own ideas. Ryan embraces your distinct vision with an unwavering commitment to passion, precision, and originality. Each project he undertakes is a labor of dedication, a fusion of research, artistic ingenuity, and profound symbolism. His commitment to authenticity is nothing short of remarkable, infusing his very soul into every creation. From half and full sleeves to bodysuits, awesome back pieces, to majestic front panels, Ryan is the artist for anyone seeking powerful, breathtaking artwork. With every stroke of his needle, he weaves a tale that's as unique as you are. Don't settle for ordinary tattoos when you can elevate your ink to the extraordinary with Ryan Allison. Embark on your creative journey by booking a consultation with him and proudly exhibit your story on your skin. Visit Ryan at Why Not Ink Studio in North Park Mall, or check out his portfolio online at ryanallison.art. Ryan Allison Tattoos. When you choose me, you're not just getting a tattoo, you're getting an experience.
The Cardinals placed James Conner on IR.
Oh, brutal for them.
And so their biggest playmaker is not going to be out for a month. And I know fantasy football aficionados were running to the waiver wire the last 24 hours to go pick up DeMarcado, the backup who nobody heard of until yesterday. But yeah, so the Cardinals,
or until right
now. Yeah, absolutely. But no, it's that game in particular, the Cardinals and Bengals, was an interesting one to watch. I mean, unfortunate for James, of course, and for them, because they were looking pretty good overall with Josh Dobbs, and losing James Conner is a huge blow. But the Bengals really was a get-right game for them with a 34-20 win. A more convincing victory was needed for this team to kind of get their mojo back a little bit. Yeah. And Joe Burrow obviously looked a lot better with that calf injury. Jamar Chase had a banner day with 13 catches for 200+ yards and a couple touchdowns in there as well. Just a massive, massive day for him and the Bengals offense. So that was encouraging. They're 2-3 on the season, so there's still a lot of work to be done for Cincinnati. But to put themselves in that position where they're really only a game out of the division, because there's a lot of parity there right now, they have to feel good about their chances. And Joe getting a game in where he throws for 317, 3 touchdowns, that's got to feel good. Also, it was 3 touchdowns for Jamar Chase. Yeah. So 192 yards, 15 catches, 3 touchdowns. What a massive game for him.
So we're going to learn if the Bengals have really officially turned it around this week. They host Seattle. Seattle's coming off a bye. So Seattle's healthy and has just been doing nothing but watching Bengals film for, 2 straight weeks. So we're going to learn a lot about the Bengals. Hosting Seattle after a bye, can they come out and get a win against a very, very good Seattle team? And, Seattle is kind of hiding under the radar there, right? Like, who's thought about Seattle? Well, they're 3-1, just had a bye. You forget about the teams who are on the bye, right? And so that's a really fascinating game this weekend. The Bengals are favored, I think, by like 2.5 at home. So that's one of those, I'm going to stay away from the line, but it's going to be a really fascinating, we're going to learn a lot about those teams type of watch. Overall, I think the biggest takeaway for me from watching that game was, again, I am not a fan of Gannon, still the head coach for the Cardinals, because he's just a weird guy. He's a defensive guy. The whole shots, pew, pew, pew thing, like none of it still sits well. And yet this team really fights and scraps and claws. So I don't know what it's going to take for that to change for me to start believing in him. But all I know is that the Cardinals are doing everything in their power. Remember, the Cardinals have 2 first-round picks, too, this year. The Bears do, and the Cardinals do. But the Cardinals have the Texans' other pick. And so the Texans are doing the opposite of what the Panthers are doing. And they're kind of running in the opposite direction. And so the Cardinals, they're going to have a really, really flexible offseason, right? You're going to have a ton of flexibility. If you don't love your head coach, you fire him, you move on, you get an offensive guy, and you have all these picks. You have Kyler Murray, you have a ton of different options. It's very similar to what the Bears are going to have. You're going to have the options to fire coach, to keep a quarterback, to draft a new quarterback, to just load up on weapons at the top of the draft, or get a ransom for a number 1 pick. So the Cardinals, what's fascinating to me is it seems like they're starting to build a scrappy culture, but I just don't know what it's going to matter if they end up with the first pick that changed the culture, that changed the quarterback, that changed the coach. So right now they're kind of a fun watch, but beyond that, they are, to me, so much of it is going to be, does Kyler play? When does he play? And what does that version of the Cardinals look like? Because that version of the Cardinals starts to feel a lot more like the Chicago Bears, where it's like everyone is desperate to win games and get their pick away as far away from the top as possible so they can keep their jobs. So right now, the Cardinals feel like a tank team. If and when Kyler plays, they're going to feel a lot more like the Bears team, where it's going to be like, no, we got to win games and save our jobs here.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that's always, in the back of the head when you're competing in these environments. The Cardinals are 1-4, so it's like, as competitive as they've been, it's like they could, the tank game is still on, but unfortunately for them, the Houston Texans own their first round pick, so they're kind of in that position. Or I'm sorry, they own the Texans' Houston's first round pick.
Yeah.
So they actually could position themselves very nicely in the top 5. But the way Houston's playing, maybe it'll be not as high of a pick as they initially thought. But
like it's one of those things where you say to yourself, the Bears and the Cardinals, like if Kyler comes back and plays really, really good football and they helps them win 4 or 5 games down the stretch, right? Just like if Justin Fields right now, if what we've seen the last 2 weeks stays for the rest of the year or somewhere close to it, and the Bears end up winning 6-7 games, like they're going to be, those 2 teams will be far enough away. If the Texans start turning it around and playing poop, and if the Panthers stay really, really bad, and the Bears end up with the 1-2, the Cardinals end up with the 1-2 pick because the Texans and the Panthers, that's where you say to yourself, you're in a really great spot as a franchise, because then you feel like you have your quarterbacks and you can get a ransom. The Bears got DJ Moore because of that and got all that stuff. Like, think about, you do that again. You can get another A-plus player and picks. Like, it is out there. Those things are going to be out there and more, because
Marvin Harrison Jr., man.
It's going to be out there and even more, because people are so much higher on this year's draft class than last year's draft class as far as the quarterbacks go. So for right now, I do feel very much so the Cardinals are kind of a non-story until they become a giant story. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. But speaking of the Panthers, I want to touch on that real quick, because obviously, Bryce Young being the number 1 overall pick, totally different situation there in Carolina than in Houston. But I mean, the number 2 overall pick, CJ Stroud, is outplaying him. And this was something that doesn't come as a surprise to you or I, because we both felt that CJ Stroud was the better prospect. And now we're kind of seeing more rumors circulating that really there was a difference in view between Frank Reich and owner David Tepper of which quarterback to take. Is interesting, because Frank Reich, all the way leading up to the draft and afterwards, had talked about how Bryce Young was the guy all along and all of that. But it's interesting to see the differences there, because CJ Stroud is living up to the billing, whereas Bryce Young continues to struggle, and the Lions nearly doubled up on the Carolina Panthers this past weekend, 42-24.
Yeah.
Of course, they're a good team, and so you expect that to happen. But Bryce is continuing to struggle, and there's not as much pop and pizzazz that we're seeing with CJ Stroud in Houston. So what do you make of this? And do we feel that this is another sign of potentially owners pushing themselves a little bit too much into the product on the field when it's really the coaches and the evaluators that maybe you should trust and lean into a little bit more? And we're seeing this in Dallas as well, where Jerry Jones is double, tripling down on Dak Prescott right now.
I know. Well, that's Jerry. I mean, Jerry's Jerry.
Yeah,
I think if you're a Carolina Panthers fan, I would tell Panthers fans this. Your job is to put the pressure as much as you can possible with tweets, with billboards, with whatever you can, to calling into radio shows, like, because people listen to that. The owners listen to that. Writing letters to the editor, pressure your sports writers. We said it before. If you draft Bryce Young, you have to build a team that looks like the Miami Dolphins and the San Francisco 49ers. Your team has to look like that in order for your quarterback to win you Super Bowls. Because he is Tua, he is Brock Purdy. He's them. And that's fine to be at. He's Mac Jones. Like, that's
they're
fine.
both playing very well right now.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's fine. Like, that works in the NFL if your coaching staff and your organization has built a roster that supports that type of quarterback. CJ Stroud, what we're seeing, he's a little bit more, hey, just a big, strong dude who can go in there and play at the NFL level. And I would argue that the two worst receiving corps in the NFL after maybe the New England Patriots are the Panthers and the Texans. The Texans, I mean, Robert Woods and some young guys.
Nico Collins and
but again,
Dell,
he's making them. I'd never heard of them before Bryce, CJ Stroud started throwing them the ball. You know what I mean? Is it Puka Nacua or is it Matt Stafford making Puka Nacua? You know what I mean? Like, it feels a little bit like that in Houston. So I'll just say this. Houston should feel great. They should feel great. They got it right. Anderson's a stud. CJ Stroud is by far the best looking quarterback in this draft and last year's draft. And maybe even out of the last 3 years, you might take him second behind maybe only Trevor Lawrence if you look at all of that as of right now. He's playing that good. It's that early. But with Bryce, you can't panic. And if I was the head coach, if I was Frank Reich, I would if you're having these daily meetings with Tepper, which is so ridiculous, which owners don't do that. It's so bad. But if you were every day, I'd say, we have got to look like the San Francisco 49ers, sir. We got to look like you got to go out. We got to draft to look like the Niners. We got to have the best offensive line and the best defensive line in the game of football. And then I need weapons who can get the ball within 5 to 10 yards of the field of the line of scrimmage and make plays. Because that's what the Niners do. You have the best offensive and defensive line in football, and then everything is within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, and we're going to physically dominate you. And then or you do what the Dolphins do. You say, we have one of the best offensive lines, the best defensive line in football, and then we have the fastest men who play football on the planet, so they can turn 5-yard hitches into 60-yard touchdowns. Or they can turn. We have a guy who just throw them go routes, and they can be wide open like he was in college. Because Bryce Young was used to throwing to college wide receivers. He could throw the deep ball because they're wide open. He can't. There's a difference between, can you actually throw it 60 yards, which Bryce Young can, or can you throw it 60 yards while people are covered in the NFL, which Bryce Young can't. He can't. He's not Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers can throw it 60 yards when people are covered because he can put it in the window it needs to be.
Yeah.
So Bryce Young can't do that, but Tua can't do it either. He's not Aaron Rodgers, but Tua can do it with his wide receivers because they're wide open. So Panthers fans, don't panic. The panic will set in is if at this time next year your roster still hasn't taken improvements and steps in the direction to look like the Dolphins and the Niners, and you're still running a weird offense that just feels disjointed. because he's not good enough to just be a quarterback in the league the way CJ Stroud is. It's a tough situation to be in. And credit to Houston. They were one of the worst run organizations of the last decade in the NFL. And they, within a year of getting DeMeco Ryans and this young quarterback, now look like a very, very competent organization that you should buy stock in the Houston Texans.
Yeah, you don't want to play them every week.
I think they win at home this week against New Orleans. I do.
It could very well happen. New Orleans, despite the showing that they put here, shutting out the Patriots, by the way, back-to-back worst losses for Bill Belichick.
They've been outscored 74-3 in 2 games, the Patriots.
It's unbelievably terrible. Very rough situation there in New England for sure. But yeah, I mean, the Saints put up 34 on them. But I could see the Texans absolutely winning that game, just the way that they've been playing. Oh, what was that?
72-3. Sorry, I checked my stats.
Gotcha. Are the Cowboys frauds?
Well, I thought that from the beginning of the season.
I mean, I think we're both on the same page with Dallas. It's just, this was the first point in the season where it's like total validation, right? I mean, yes, they're playing the best team in the league right now, unquestionably. But it was the Cowboys that were puffing their chest all week long. It was Jerry Jones getting on the radio talking about how, if we want to make it to the Super Bowl, they're going to hopefully have to come through us and stuff. Obviously, kind of a soft arrogance there a little bit, but 32-point gap. You put up 10 points.
Yeah.
It's bad. It's bad. And Dak Prescott is just not able to overcome good defenses. And in this case, a phenomenal defense. Meanwhile, Brock Purdy is doing everything right. And this offense is humming. They are the best team in the NFL right now. To me, there's no question about that. Do you think that they're the bona fide number one team, or do you think that the Chiefs or the Eagles are right there with them?
I have the Chiefs and the Eagles still ahead of them, just in the sense that I think the Chiefs have the best defense Patrick Mahomes' career, and he's Patrick Mahomes. So, and it's Andy Reid.
I get that. So, but they're 5-0, and they've blown teams away.
On paper, the Niners are the best team. But if you're telling me, I have to put money on a team to win the Super Bowl, I'm going to go Chiefs, I'm going to go Eagles, then I'm going to go Niners in third.
Well, that's fair, but I think
if
power
I'm putting
rankings are much more what have you done for me lately type of thing. That's what I'm thinking in the vein of power rankings. I would put them at number 1 right now.
I look at things differently. I'm projecting. Who do I want always be thinking forward. I'll say this. I don't think a blowout win over Dallas is that impressive because I'm not a big believer in Dallas.
They're not.
And I'll say this, Dallas, even if they had Diggs, right? Which losing Diggs, it sucks, right? But name how many, what's a great player who hasn't played for the Steelers the last 3 weeks because of injury?
Yeah, Cam Hayward, Deontay Johnson. Yeah.
But Eddie Jackson for the Bears. Every team right now is missing key starters. Some of them are missing star starters. It's just the NFL. That happens. You have what everyone raves is Dan Quinn is the next coach in waiting. So it's the Cowboys can win one way. Their defense comes out and is playing lights out, and their offense then manages the football game. The Dallas Cowboys offensively are bad. They're just not good enough to compete at that level of football. The Dallas Cowboys are a very good middle of the pack team who could probably destroy the Bears, beat up on the Broncos. You know what I mean?
They're kind of like Pittsburgh right now.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. And Dak, how my feelings on Dak. He's just not what he used to be. He's had some really bad injuries in his career. That ankle was messed up. He has had some bad injuries, and he's just a shell of himself. He is a timing, rhythm, pocket guy who cannot throw the deep ball right now, accurately. He could throw the Bryce Young deep ball, they're wide open. Sure, everyone can throw that. And so, I don't believe in the Dallas Cowboys at all. But I'll say this about the Niners. I will. Brock Purdy is starting to really earn his stripes and earn more praise and respect from me, a doubter, in the sense that it's not just. It's easy to say, "Oh, Mac Jones would be amazing in that offense." Kyle Shanahan in that offense is terrific, right? But we saw him with C.J. Beathard, a late-round pick, and they couldn't win games. We saw him with Nick Mullins, a late-round pick, and he did not play like Brock Purdy. We saw him with Jimmy G, and Brock Purdy's numbers right now are way better than Jimmy G's numbers ever were with the Niners. So Purdy is better than all of them. And Purdy is quickly becoming a Jared Goff level type quarterback in my eyes. Like he's mobile. He can make throws on the run. He's so good with his decision making. He doesn't turn the ball over. Do I trust him yet? Still in the biggest of big moments? No, I gotta absolutely see it to believe it. Regular season wins with Kyle Shanahan. And as part of it is I don't necessarily trust Kyle Shanahan the biggest moments. 28-3. He's a part of some of the biggest collapses in that way. Struggles in NFC championship games. And so I love the Niners. They're an incredible watch because they are just a bloodbath waiting to happen. But I will say this about Purdy. He is starting to really earn some legit credit and street cred. And Dan, I think it's a funny thing to think about. If you look at the last 3 draft classes of quarterbacks, right, from the Trevor Lawrence #1 overall pick to just this last year with Will Levis and all them, quarterbacks year 3 and younger, where's Purdy in that ranking? I mean, in my opinion, Lawrence, Stroud, Fields, Purdy, Pickett, like, you know what I mean? Like, where is that? He's better than Wilson. He's better than Lance. He's better than every quarterback who was drafted ahead of him, except for maybe Pickett. And even then, I think it's really close. And I think a lot of people would take Purdy over Pickett right now.
Right now, absolutely.
And then at this year's draft, I mean, he's better looking than Bryce Young, and he's better looking than Anthony Richardson. I wouldn't say he's better looking than C.J. Stroud overall. C.J. Stroud is bigger, physical. I'd want C.J. Stroud over Purdy, but he's right there. I mean, he's right there.
Yeah, no, he's fantastic. And he's perfect for what they want. So it's one of those situations where it was the perfect confluence of scheme, player, marriage that's just working out beautifully for them there in San Francisco. We had the NHL season begin yesterday. The Bedard, the next 15 years for the Chicago Blackhawks began yesterday, and the Blackhawks get a win over the Pittsburgh Penguins in Pittsburgh, and Fire Canada chants rang out in the arena, which was may have been a little confusing for some of the players since there were many Canadian players on the ice. Like, what the hell? What's going on? But all that being said, the Steelers get a very Steelers-Ravens-esque victory over the Ravens, and now the Steelers are first place in the division. They look terrible for 3 quarters offensively and then able to put it together. Kenny Pickett, I will say, of all of the criticism that there is to be had for him, and there's quite a few. He runs into pressure a lot, gets a little bit happy feet, doesn't seem to go past his first read often. So there are obviously concerns with that area of play, but he does have the clutch gene, and that's something that is hard to get in quarterbacks. I mean, he has now 5 fourth quarter comebacks in 17 games. Yeah. And there's something to be said for that. Like, he rises to the occasion in big moments. It takes him a while to get there, but yet again this past week, and it's been 2 against the Ravens. These are big games. Gets the seemingly audibles to the call against cover 0 and gets George Pickens on the go-ahead touchdown late in the fourth quarter there against Baltimore, and they end up winning 17-10. They're now 3-2 with all of the mess, all of the issues that there have been with this offense. They've been able to stack together team wins, or at least defense special teams wins over the last couple weeks. So this isn't sustainable, Mark, but at the same time, I've got to say, like, I have to temper my anger at times because they are winning, and this was a big win. So I got to give kudos to Kenny Pickett for coming up big at the end, and this defense, TJ Watt again with 2 sacks and 1 to seal the game. They come up big when they need it the most. So it's just about stacking that moving forward. But they're in first place, which I did not forecast.
Chris Letang, Sid the Kid Crosby, and Evgeny Malkin for the Pittsburgh Penguins. They just started year 18 together as a trio.
That's amazing. Yeah.
That just surpassed which trio for the most seasons together as a trio? It's an MLB team. They were very famous in the 90s and early 2000s for winning many, many rings. East Coast.
Really interesting. Okay. Well, no, I'm thinking it's Jeter and A-Rod.
You got one of them. Well, not A-Rod. 18-7. They were together for 17 years. Jeter.
Mariano Rivera.
Okay.
And then would have been Clemens.
You're going to be mad. Jorge Posada.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
But I saw that on ESPN. I thought that was really cool. Anyways.
That is cool.
I'll say this. You nailed it on Kenny Pickett. I think the jury's still so unwritten on Kenny Pickett because of the offensive coordinator and struggles of the offensive line early and the lack of run game. It's just been brutal. He is a quarterback that is unlike CJ Stroud or some of the other guys we talked about. He's not a savior, but he can be a really, really terrific quarterback if he's getting the proper help he needs to develop an offense around him, because he has the clutch. He does have the it factor, whether it's a big scramble, a big throw late. He's done it in a short year and a half of watching him as a player. It's only been, I think, 16 games at this point.
17. Yeah. And he just finished technically his first full season of play.
He's still so raw, is so green, but I think the ceiling is still there for Kenny Pickett. The problem is I just don't know if we'll ever get to see what that ceiling's like with Matt Canada's offense. And I will say this. The other thing is, I ask you a question. Tomorrow, Chiefs versus Ravens at Arrowhead, or Pittsburgh Steelers versus Ravens versus Chiefs at Arrowhead. So they're both playing the Chiefs. Which team actually has a chance to win that game?
Yeah, it's
the Ravens.
It's Baltimore. Yeah.
So the Pittsburgh Steelers are still like the Green Bay Packers, just the bad boys of the division. Like, they just know how to win in their division, right? They will find ways to win in their division, and Mike Tomlin deserves a ton of credit for that, and he's won a lot of games in his career like that. I'm still higher. If you were to power rankings, I'm still higher on the Ravens than the Steelers now.
I would agree with that.
But the Steelers have had this weird way of closing the gap and playing. TJ Watt is phenomenal. I mean,
they have Lamar Jackson's number. They've won 6 of 7.
And that's bad for Lamar and John Harbaugh. Like, they've got to figure that out because that is bad. Like, a good coach, good quarterback, that can't happen. And
the Ravens Steelers also dropped
I know. I mean,
9
the Ravens
that was that game honestly should have been 21-0 before,
Yes. I mean, started. And so, but it wasn't. And the Steelers found a way to win that game. And so they capitalized on the better team making mistakes, and they won the football game. And I don't know if it's good for Steelers fans because, again, you want Canada gone. Like, he's not the answer. So winning games doesn't help because Mike Tomlin and this organization doesn't make changes anyways. But they're certainly not going to make changes if there's a W in the win column. I'll just leave my point is that I'm with you on Pickett. He's so green, so raw still. I think there's still a lot of potential there. But until you have a different offensive look and a running, and Najee Harris, you're lucky in the sense that you're not going to have to pay Najee Harris. Like, the Colts had to pay Jonathan Taylor because he had the multiple seasons of dude's a freak. We owe him.
Sure.
Najee had a good year, but he's not had you can move on from Najee, and they should. Right. Like, the backup is having a way better. Najee's lost the explosiveness. It looks like those years at Alabama have added up, and he's just not close to Derrick Henry. The thought was he could be kind of like a Derrick Henry light.
Right.
He's not.
Yeah.
He's never turned into that.
Yeah. I mean, he can eke out, some tough yardage, but I agree. I mean, Jaylen Warren has been way more explosive.
He's explosive as heck.
They need to continue to get him involved. I mean, he lit a spark for that team late in this game. So if they just keep kind of, putting him into the game plan a little bit more, I think that's going to help things as well. The offensive line played a little bit better this past week. So hopefully they're just on that trend. They got a bye this week, and then they take on the Rams. Like, that's a winnable game coming out of the bye for sure. So, if you can find yourself at a 4-2 spot, you're feeling pretty good, going into the meat of the season, if you will. So a lot on the horizon there for the Steelers. Those were really the main
Monday Night
games that I wanted
Football.
to
I've been
talk
waiting.
on.
That was
Let's
the last
do
thing
it.
I want to talk about is just the Packers and the Raiders Monday Night Football.
Yeah, the Packers look terrible.
Here's the thing. I
You
will
gotta
say
beat the
this.
Raiders.
I will say this. The Raiders are scrappy, and Max Crosby is in that tiny tier of like Fred Warner, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, where it's like those dudes are different. Like, you know what I mean? Like that. And he's in that tier solidly. Like I watched that game as a Bears fan going like, I need that guy. Like, get me that guy. If my defense needs that guy, because my defense doesn't have that guy. I need that guy. And so the Raiders should be very pumped about that win. Their coach tried to give it away with stupid play calling, the field goal late. Like Josh McDaniel is so dumb, and his face is just getting so fat, and he's just like a little man, and he's so dumb. But credit to Jimmy G. I thought overall he played well. 2 of the interceptions, the first one from Jordan Love was one of the worst interceptions I've ever seen. We talked about on Twitter.
It was terrible.
If the first guy didn't pick it, the second guy was gonna, and if there was no one there, it would have been behind the receiver, incomplete. Like really bad. Really, really bad. Yeah. And the second interception on the deep ball, again, it was just underthrown and given up for the defender to make the play, and it was not at the back corner of the end zone. Like he had him beat, and it was underthrown, and you couldn't even give your receiver a chance to make the play. The second interception on the tip, it is what it is. I'll say this about Jordan Love. I hate that the Packers are on a bye week. I think that's bad for the Packers because they had basically an extended bye week. They were Thursday Night Football to Monday. It was a long, long gap. And now you're on a bye week. This kid just needs to play football. Like he just still doesn't look like he's got consistency. And now you're without Bakhtiari, so your offensive line is taking a hit. You have weapons. Dobbs had to catch that ball, but him and Watson are not. They're not the worst receiving core in the league, and so you have great running backs. I just don't see. I don't see the offensive spark from the Packers right now. Like, where's the creativity like we see with the Lions and the tight end play, and then we see with the Niners with the tight end play? Where's that creative? They trust their quarterback and they're having fun. I don't see any of that. And I don't see a quarterback. I see young Dak Prescott. I see a guy who's really mobile and within 20 yards can be really deadly and accurate. And when it's a deep ball, it's a little bit of hold your breath.
Yep. Totally agree. All right, before we leave, do you want to get into Thursday Night Football coming up tomorrow?
Yeah.
A quick preview as the Broncos visit the Chiefs, and a tale of 2 teams in completely different states of their franchises right now. Chiefs 4-1, Broncos 1-4, and have been embarrassed a lot lately. We've got Kansas City coming in at home, minus 10.5. What do we think about that? I feel like the Chiefs should cover that easily. And with the way the Broncos are playing and the Chiefs defense is playing, I feel even a little bit more confident than that. So honestly, despite that being a pretty big spread that I would want to steer away from most times, I think I would take it with the Chiefs. Just the way Denver's been playing, it's just brutal, and it's an Arrowhead, of course.
If you can get the 10.5 now, and then Kelsey plays, you feel really good about that. If you get the 10.5 and then Kelsey doesn't play, then you're like, crap, I probably could have got this at like 8 or 7.5, right?
Yeah.
So it's a coin flip. If you're just looking for a sure win, the Chiefs money line, the Patrick Mahomes does not lose to the Broncos. He definitely doesn't lose to the Broncos at home. I'll say this. I think it's a big Isaiah Pacheco game. That Broncos defense is bad against the run. And I don't think Kelsey will play. So I think it's one of those Isaiah Pacheco, they're going to run the ball, and it'll be a really easy game for Patrick. He'll probably have like barely 200 yards, but 3 touchdowns. Really simple. Pacheco, 85 yards, 2 touchdowns. And it'll just be one of those like ho-hum, ba-ba-da-ba-ba. And here's my thing about the Broncos. they are maybe in the worst position of any franchise in the NFL. They gave up so many draft picks to get Russell Wilson. They're still paying for that. And they gave up draft picks to get Sean Payton.
Yeah, exactly. I know. They
are in a terrible spot.
Yeah.
A terrible
And they're paying
spot.
those two guys each $100 million plus guaranteed.
It's a terrible spot for them. They are in a bad spot. And they're in a division that is not easy to win. It's not easy to right the ship in the division. So Godspeed to the Denver Broncos. I don't know. It's easy to point out what the problem is with Denver. I don't know the solution. Don't ask me the solution. I don't know. The solution is you got to play better. Like you just got to win. I don't know what the solution is. Can I say this? Everyone was like, oh, the Bears get Mike McGlinchey. He's looked terrible. I'm so glad the Bears didn't pay Mike McGlinchey. They did not overpay for him. He's looked very, very bad. The Niners knew the right decision to walk away from him when they did. They're just not a good football team. And the problem with it is, overall, it doesn't look like a well-coached football team. Like,
right.
You can say it's a dearth of talent, but when you watch them, like I watched the whole game against the Bears, then you watch them it's like they just don't look like they do anything well. Like nothing well. And that is a lot on the head coach. And like, what do you do well? What do you stand on? What do you stump on? And you know, it makes you reflect on all those 7 to 9 years with Sean Payton in New Orleans, where you're like, you know, Drew Brees was putting up giant numbers and they always hung around because that division was never great in the NFC South. And it's just not flying right now. And if you're Sean Payton, I think the scariest thing is there's probably a little voice in the back of his head that says this was a mistake. And that's, if you're a Broncos fan, the scariest thing. Like,
for sure. Yeah. Especially if a job opening comes up with the Chargers or something like that this next year.
Well, what's his buyout? Like, I don't know. I mean, it's brutal.
Who knows? But I don't think they're going to want to give up on that after putting all of this investment.
They're stuck with Russell. They can draft quarterbacks, but they are stuck with Russell for at least another calendar year.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they're going to have to figure something out. Yeah, because I don't think either one of those guys is going to handle going, 2-15 or whatever the next 2 years. It's just not in either DNA. So rough outing really for the Broncos so far, and I feel like another one's on the horizon coming up tomorrow evening. So that does it for our look at a very injury-riddled week. Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Next week, the debut of the Super Bowl plane. It comes back.
Yes.
I feel good about it. I almost debuted it this week, but there's a lot of that, like, first class, business class. Like, it's just a gray area. I feel I'll have a lot more clarity next week.
We're working on finding a plane set to do the show from, so stay tuned on that. Virtually, both of us are going to have our own respective planes that we will be doing the show from.
Yeah.
But yeah, all right. Well, good stuff. Yeah, week 6.
The United Lounge at O'Hare. We're going to go to the United Lounge, at the football lounge in the United Lounge, sponsored by United.
Yeah. Do you have the football lounge mileage plus? Like we're going to have a credit card pretty soon. Get the merch and we'll be off and running with that. But yeah, that'll do it for this week 5 recap episode here on the Football Lounge. Be sure to check us out on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, Threads, everywhere at FB Lounge Pod. And be sure to like and subscribe as well. And you can check out all of the content from the For Frequency's Sake podcast network at For Fantasy's Sake QC.com. We'll see you back here next week with our Week 6 recap.